There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is a middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is a dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone. What's up, guys? Alf here, back with another episode of Analyzing the Twilight Zone. We are on Season 1, Episode 3, Mr. Denton on Doomsday. It was written by Rod Serling and directed by Alan Reisner. And it first aired October 16th, 1959. So, before I start talking about this, I guess when I was a kid, it's not like I wasn't into Westerns, but I wasn't a huge fan of Westerns, so I guess I always think back and I think the Western episodes of The Twilight Zone were ones that I watched the least and don't remember too well some of them. Well, I guess I remember them, but they're not very memorable to me. When I got to this one, I was like, this one's not all that great. But after watching it again, it's a pretty cool story. It's not super deep or anything, but it's not bad. I mean, I was looking through the list of episodes for season 1, and it's like the really deep ones don't come out till like episode 7 or 8 around there. So or at least the really, really like classic great ones don't. But yeah, we'll get to those eventually. I think I gotta start doing these like twice a week or something, because there's so many episodes. It's gonna take me forever to do this, but I don't mind. At least I have consistent content to fall back on if I need to. So this episode was one of the stories when Rod Serling in 1959 made a little promotional film to show to potential sponsors, and this was one of the plots he described in it. But originally it was under the name Death, Street, and Mr. Dingle. The basic premise was similar, but it had some different things. It was way more comedic, and instead of a gunslinger, a drunken gunslinger was a meek school teacher who gained notoriety eventually as, unintentionally as a top gunslinger. The name Mr. Dingle, he eventually changed the name of the character, and the name Mr. Dingle, I guess Rod Serling really liked that name. It's a really silly name, but he uses it later on in a 1961 episode called Mr. Dingle the Strong, which I love. Well, we'll get to that maybe in like a year or two, but it stars Burgess Meredith, which is one of my favorite. Any episode of Burgess Meredith are like my favorites. The story starts, and we're in the old Western times, right? And outside of a saloon, we see a drunk on the ground, and his name's Al Denton, and he's played by Dan Dorea. This other cowboy guy comes out of the saloon wearing all black. If you remember what old Westerns, the guys who wore black were always the bad guys. But he's played by Martin Landau, which we all know. Great actor. But in this, he kind of plays like the villain of the story, and he's like the top gunslinger, I guess, in the town. And him and his group and his gang like to bully Al Denton. So every time I say Al Denton, I feel like I'm saying al dente, like a pasta. I don't know if he did that on purpose, because that's what it sounds like. But yeah, they bully Denton, and they come out and they make him sing songs about how dry he is in order for them to buy him alcohol, right? They keep telling him, hey, I'll buy you a drink if you sing this song. And they're basically doing it to humiliate him. They laugh.
Come on, Denton. How dry I am.
When we get inside, we see a woman who, the character's name is Liz Smith, played by Gene Cooper, and, she's always talking to the bartender, like, isn't there anything you could do about this? She feels bad for the guy, he's down on his luck, he's just a bad alcoholic who's, basically self-deprecating, and, these guys are picking on him and making him humiliate himself. She doesn't like it, but, there's really nothing they can do about it. This guy, that Martin Landau plays, Dan Hodling, is basically the town baddie, so it's like nobody really wants to step up to him and shit. Yeah, he gets his drink, and eventually he walks off to the side and finds a gun out of nowhere, and he picks it up. He's messing with it, and the girl from inside, I guess she's like a saloon chick, I guess, the way she's dressed. I'm guessing she's a prostitute or something, but they never go into what she's there for, but that's what she dresses like, and looks like. Oh, here comes the SJWs are gonna come after me for saying, oh, you're only saying women are whores. But he picks up the gun. He's like messing with it. She comes out and she's like, she's kind of trying to give him a little pep talk. Like, why do you do what these guys tell you? Why do you stand up to them? Why don't you stand up to them and do something about it? And he's all meek and alcoholic. So he's like, I don't know. So, eventually, the guy comes back hodling. And he tells him again, let's hear that song about how dry you are. I'll buy you another drink. Let's do it, And the girl's trying to talk him into not doing it. She was like, you know what? I'll buy you a drink. You don't have to do it. And she looks at him, but the guy keeps saying, let's do it. Let's have it. And you don't go into why he doesn't just take her offer and get the drink, but it's probably assumed that he's kind of scared of these guys and they've got him dominated basically. And so he does it. He starts singing again. She's like disappointed. He starts walking towards the front of the saloon. Oh, before that, there's a scene where the bartender is at the saloon doors and he's like, hey, come on, man, why don't you leave the guy alone? And and fucking, it looks so real, like Martin Landau's character, he like kicks the door behind him without looking, and he kicks it hard. You just see the bartender disappear, and I'm like, dude, was that real? Did he really hurt? You like, was that guy hurt? Like, what the fuck happened there?
This is right.
Go on back to the bar, Charlie. Can't you see we got private business?
Listen, Dad.
But yeah, I guess that's acting. And so he goes up on the front of the saloon, like to get his drink that this guy told him he'd give him for singing. And that's when Hodling notices he has a gun in his hand. He's like, oh, look at you. You're a gunslinger, huh? I heard you used to be really good at it. He's like, you wanna, let's, why don't we have a little showdown, huh? Me and you, and everybody's like, oh, wait, whoa, chill, like, don't do that. But he keeps persisting and he's like, yeah, come on, let's do it. And, the dude's like, oh my God, Miss Smith, please tell him, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to fight him. I don't want to do this, please, and while he's saying that, he's like waving the gun around. Then we see another character, and he's got a little traveling like carriage where he sells things, and his name is Henry J. Fate. And you see him look over, he does like a little nod or something, and then while Denton is waving his gun around, trying to say, like, please tell him I don't want to fight anybody. I'm not a gunslinger anymore. The gun goes off, and it shoots the gun right off of Hodling's hand, right? So Hodling's hand, he's all like, oh, and everybody instantly is like, whoa, and they all grab him. They all grab Denton, and they're like, wow, that was a great shot, dude. You still got it. Come on in. I'll buy you a drink, and everybody's like celebrating this awesome shot he did, and they bring him in. They take him to the bar. Everybody's like huddled around him, like patting him on the back, and the bartender starts serving him a drink. And then you hear Denton, and it's Hodling. He's in there now, and he's got his gun drawn. He's like, I'm going to shoot you. He's basically really pissed at what just happened. He's ready to shoot him. And it happens again where Denton turns around. He's, waving the gun around, talking, gesturing with his hands. And he's like, hey, Hodling, I'm sorry. I that was an accident. I don't have anything to do with it. And then you see the Henry J. Fate guy again, nod again. And the gun goes off. Boom. And he shoots the lantern on the ceiling that's, connected to the ceiling. He shoots the chain, and the lantern falls down and crashes onto the dude's hand again, knocking his gun out of his hand. And again, everybody's like, whoa, what a fucking awesome shot. Wow, crazy. So this starts giving him his confidence back, right? So he's no longer dominated. People, the bartender now is like, hey, how about that drink? Here you go. And, Denton's like, you know what? Nah, I'm not really thirsty right now. I don't need a drink. Starts rubbing his beard, and he's like, I could go for a shave. Then he steps out and starts talking to the lady again, and he starts explaining what happened to him. Basically, he was the top gunslinger in town, and people would come from all over to come challenge him, basically, and day after day, he would, win. He was the fastest draw, so he would win all these challenges. But, obviously, everybody in the region who was a top gunslinger thought, this guy's the best? Yeah, well, let me see, and they'll go and they'll fight him. And he would win every time. But he talked about how after each win, he would have a drink, and every morning he would have a drink. I mean, not after each fight. Each morning he would have a drink, basically to deal with, he didn't want to kill this many people, but he had no choice, basically, because people would come and challenge him. And, but he'd have a drink every morning, and, little by little that drink would get, he'd drink more and more every morning. And then one day he was challenged by a 16-year-old kid, and the 16-year-old kid wouldn't back down. He kept trying to get him to back down. He wouldn't. So they had it out, and he shot the kid. And that's the part where he got really depressed because he's thought about it, and he was like, damn, this kid laying in the middle of the ground with blood, with my, bleeding all over the place with my bullet in him. I just killed this little 16-year-old kid. Funny little Easter egg here for you guys is Denton's speech to Miss Smith was parodied in the Mel Brooks comedy Blazing Saddles. If you've seen it, Gene Wilder's character, the Waco Kid, says that he used to be the top gunslinger until he was challenged by a 6-year-old, and and that led him to being an alcoholic. And it's basically a parody of this episode. So yeah, after he explains to Liz Smith the story of how he became an alcoholic and stopped being a gunslinger, he says, now he's a gunslinger again and not drinking, and he's like, he knows what's gonna happen now that he defeated Hodling. He knows what's gonna happen, word's gonna get out, and he's gonna be challenged over and over again. Already, he's like, so he goes home, he does a quick shave. So he's at a place shaving, and these two guys come in, and they're like, hey, we're looking for this guy, he looks like this, blah, 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 blah. He goes by the name Al Denton. You know the guy? And he's like, yeah, that's me. So he's like, yeah, we know Pete Grant's looking to, you're the quickest gun in the West, and he's looking for a challenge. He says he's the fastest gun, so he wants to challenge you. He says to meet him at this place, blah, blah, blah. Denton's he's like, man, that was fast. You guys are already here, right? He's like, I only had time for a shave. So he says, yeah, I'll meet the guy at the bar. Tell him I'll meet him there. And he starts hearing noise outside. He looks out and he sees Henry Fate messing around with his wares, I guess, on his carriage. So he goes out to talk to him because he sees Henry Fate looks at him real quick, nods, tips the hat and shit. So he goes out, he talks to him. And Henry Fate's like, yeah, I've been seeing all the stuff that's been going on. I got something for you. Because earlier, I kind of skipped the part, but earlier you saw him training to, practicing shooting a bottle, and he couldn't hit it. He was way off. And his hands are all shaky. Obviously, it's the same day. He's still an alcoholic. You know what I'm saying? He's still recovering from being an alcoholic. He hasn't quit drinking for that long. So he's still all shaky and can't make a shot. So at this point, when he talks to Henry Fate, he was like, yeah, I know you can't hit anything, but he's like, I got just the thing for you. And he pulls out a little bottle. He's like, you drink from this bottle, and for 10 seconds, you'll get to hit anything you want. You'll have the perfect aim. You'll never miss within the 10 seconds from drinking this. He doesn't believe it. He's like, wow, that's crazy. The guy's like, here, why don't you try it out? And he gave him one. He drinks it, and he's like, there's your target. And it was like a lamppost in front of a house or whatever. And so he shoots it, perfect shot, boom, and he was like, oh shit. So he's like, see, it works. And then he counts down the rest of the time, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, yeah, that's it, it's over. And he's like, all right. So he gives him another one, and he's like, here you go, take this, right before you have your showdown in the bar. And he asks him how much it costs. The guy says, it's free of charge on the house. And he was like, oh. So he's at the bar, he's waiting for the guy shows up. And he turns around, tries to talk the guy out of it, but then he looks down, and in the guy's hand, the guy pulls out his gun, he's pointing it at Denton, but in the other hand, he's got a bottle exactly like Denton has that Denton just drank. So obviously Henry Fate had talked to that guy too and gave him one of those bottles, to defeat him. But you can see this guy, Doug McClure, was really young when he played this part. Doug McClure ended up becoming a huge actor, but he was really young when this came out. So he was like a young dude there, and you could tell he was nervous when he first comes in with the gun, but his nerves were, that's probably why he took the bottle. You don't get a backstory, but you can kind of tell he was a dude that probably just got pushed into this. People thought he was the quickest draw. Maybe he won one or something, a few, and people think he's the quickest, but he is going against another guy who has a history of being the quickest gun. So I guess he's nervous. They both have the bottle, and they both notice it. I think Henry kind of tries to talk him out. Not Henry. Denton kind of talks him out of it, but it doesn't happen. So they're like, all right, fuck it. And then he's like, just draw, Denton, and they both draw. And they shoot. Their shots are so perfect, I guess, and maybe both of them were under the impression maybe they didn't really want to kill each other. So what ends up happening is they shoot the gun out of each other's hands, basically once in a million fucking type of shot, and they both do it, and it fucks up both of their hands. So there's a doctor there because it was basically a set up showdown. So there's a doctor there to basically take whoever gets shot and try to help them out, but in the end, he looks at Denton's hands and he's like, well, there goes your shooting days. You're not going to be able to shoot anybody. You never be able to hold a gun straight again. And basically the other guy too, they both can't shoot a gun again and both got to live. And Denton sees it as, obviously he sees it as a blessing. Now he's got his confidence back and he doesn't have to be the fastest draw in the West, right? So now he's free of both of these things that were confining him to being who he was. And now he could just live his life as a normal person. So, and he looks at this young guy and he's like, hey, I'm glad this happened, basically like, hey, you're free of this. And basically gives him the talk, like, you're free of this. You don't have to do this anymore. You can live your life normal now and, not worry about having to, live your day by day being challenged and shit. He's like, and he's happy that it happened to him while he was young as opposed to Denton, who happened to him when he was already old and washed up. But yeah, that's where it ends. I think Henry Fate leaves town and ends on that. And yeah, that's practically where it ends. It's a pretty cool episode. I enjoy it. It's the guy's name being Henry Fate kind of gives away the idea of the story. It's basically like, fate can lead you to do different things, but it's not really fate. What it is more is kind of a story telling you not to fall into fate, not be relegated to your positions in life. This guy was a down in his luck alcoholic because something he did bad and he couldn't get out of that and was just stuck in that until fate stepped in and gave him his draw hand back. But all that did was stick him to another predicament where he was stuck being the fastest draw in the West, being challenged every day and having to kill people every day, only for fate to step in again and save him from that and free him from the things that were holding him down. But I think fate is there just as a placeholder for you doing, making those changes. You need to make those changes in your life and step away from the things that you think are fate. Like, I'm relegated to be this alcoholic because of fate, or, it's not fate. It's, it's you. You're the one being stuck in these positions. But it's just a way to show you that, one little thing can change your life altogether. So don't be stuck where you're stuck at, because that one little thing is around the corner and will change your life if you accept it. But that's about it. I don't really have much else to say about this episode. It was cool to watch it again after not seeing it for so long, and maybe my memory of it the way it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. So it was a pretty good one. I would recommend it. Next, I will be covering the 4th episode, the 16mm Shrine. So come back for that. Thanks, guys, for watching. See you soon. Bye.
How dry I am. Nobody cares how dry I am.